The San Antonio Spurs have a history built by giants. You look up at the rafters and you see the banners of legends like David Robinson and Tim Duncan, the Admiral and the Big Fundamental. These guys were titans who built a dynasty that lasted for 2 decades. Their playoff debuts were the stuff of legend, the first steps on a long road to greatness. But last night, a 22-year-old from France took his first step onto that same court, and in just 48 minutes, he didn't just look like he belonged with the legends. He started rewriting their history. While the entire basketball world was losing its mind over Victor Wembanyama's insane 35-point playoff debut, and while Hall of Famers on national TV were at a loss for words, the man at the center of it all was completely unfazed. The city of San Antonio was celebrating its first playoff win in 7 long years. But after a performance that put the whole league on notice, Wembanyama gave a simple 3-word response that reveals a terrifyingly cold mentality. It's a mindset that should have every other superstar in the NBA watching their back. The points were historic, sure. The highlights were unbelievable. But it's his reaction or the lack of one that proves he's just built differently. So why wasn't he impressed when everyone else was in shock? Let's set the scene. It's Game 1. The 62-win Spurs, seeded second in the West, are hosting the 7th seed Portland Trail Blazers, a tough team that just clawed its way through the play-in tournament. The energy in the Frostbank Center was off the charts. A city starving for the playoffs was finally about to eat. And the main course was Victor Wembanyama. Portland's game plan was obvious from the jump. Get physical. Don't let the kid get into a rhythm. They threw their biggest defenders at him, Donovan Clingan and Robert Williams III, trying to muscle him around. Most players in their playoff debut, even the great ones, would shrink a little under that pressure, maybe hesitate or force a bad shot. But Wembanyama isn't most players. You can't really bully a glitch in the system. He didn't just absorb the contact, he made it totally irrelevant. Instead of forcing his way into the paint, he just stepped back and drained a 3 like it was a morning shoot-around. Then he hit another one. The message was clear. If you want to pack the paint, fine. I'll just burn you from the outside. He dropped 12 points in the first quarter alone, but it was the second quarter when things went from impressive to straight-up historic. He showed off the entire bag. 1 minute, he's grabbing a rebound and going coast to coast with a behind-the-back dribble a point guard would be proud of, finishing with a monster dunk. The next, he's flying off a screen like a 7'4" Klay Thompson and hitting a contested 3 from the wing. The Blazers tried putting 8 different defenders on him throughout the game. It just didn't matter. He was a walking mismatch no matter where he was on the floor. By halftime, the damage was done. Wemby had 21 points, the most ever scored in the first half of a playoff debut since the NBA started tracking that data back in 1997. The Spurs had a comfortable lead, and the basketball world was already buzzing. This wasn't just a good start, it was a statement. Coming out of the half, Portland adjusted. They started sending harder double teams and getting more physical with him off the ball to deny him touches, and for a little while it worked. The Blazers went on a run and cut the lead to single digits. This is usually the part where a young star gets rattled. The veteran team turns up the heat. The coach makes a smart move, and the rookie finally looks, well, like a rookie. But the normal script just doesn't apply to Wembanyama. He didn't panic or try to force anything. Instead, he showed the poise of a 10-year veteran, moving the ball and setting screens to get his teammates open looks. Devin Vassell hit a couple of massive threes in that third quarter simply because Portland was terrified to leave Wemby for even a second. And then, when the team needed him most, he took over again. With the game getting tight, he got back to it. A quick post-up and a fadeaway jumper over a smaller defender, a huge block on the other end that sparked a fast break, and then came the moment he officially put his name in the Spurs history books. With a few minutes left in the fourth and the game basically decided, Wembanyama had 32 points. tying the legendary Tim Duncan for the most points ever in a Spurs playoff debut, a record that had stood since 1998. He could have just coasted to the final buzzer, but that's not really in his vocabulary. On the very next possession, he came off a screen, caught the ball at the top of the key, and without any hesitation, buried his fifth three-pointer of the night, 35 points. The record was his. The crowd went nuts, and the Spurs cruised to a 111-98 win to start their playoff run. His final stat line looked like something you'd create in a video game. 35 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 blocks, all while shooting a ridiculous 13 for 21 from the floor and 5 for 6 from 3. He became the first player in NBA history to score 35-plus points with 5-plus threes in their playoff debut. Not Spurs history, NBA history. The reaction from around the league was immediate and pretty much unanimous. Pure shock. On the Chaz NBA podcast, you had guys like Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, and Tracy McGrady, all Hall of Fame scorers, just watching the highlights in disbelief. These are some of the best to ever do it, and they were reacting like kids. Carmelo, one of the smoothest scorers ever, couldn't get over the lack of resistance, saying he was doing whatever he wanted to do. For somebody that talented, you're going to just let him roam around with no physicality. He's going to have nights just like this. Analysts everywhere were calling it a message to the rest of the NBA. The consensus was clear. We just watched a generational shift happen in real time. The era of small ball might have just been made obsolete by a guy with the size of a center and the skills of a guard. He's the answer to every defensive scheme. The performance backed up the Spurs' incredible 62-win season and was a loud and clear announcement that their 7-year playoff victory drought was over. This wasn't just a win, it was an arrival. But after all the records and jaw-dropping highlights, the scariest moment of the night came after the game was over, in the quiet of the post-game press conference. Reporters were teeing him up for his big "I'm here" moment. They asked about the performance, about breaking Duncan's record, about the pressure. They were giving him every chance to smile, celebrate, and soak it all in. And Wembanyama gave them absolutely nothing. He just sat there stone-faced and pushed the praise away. He credited his teammates. He talked about their defensive plan. He completely downplayed one of the greatest debuts ever. When a reporter pushed him to talk about the significance of the night, he just looked back and said with zero emotion, "Job's not done. Job's not done. Think about that." A 22-year-old, after a game that had legends and rivals in absolute shock, didn't see a reason to celebrate. He just saw it as step one. For him, a 35-point, record-shattering game wasn't the goal. It was just what was required to get to the next game. This wasn't a party, it was a business trip, and he was just punching the clock. That's the kind of assassin's mentality that separates the great players from the legends. It's a mind that's totally immune to hype and pressure. Oh, and by the way, he did all this while dealing with a recent rib bruise, which makes his performance even crazier. His physical gifts are obvious. A 7'4" player who can shoot, handle the ball, and protect the rim is a cheat code, but you can try to build a game plan for that. How do you game plan for a mind that focused? How do you rattle a player who isn't even impressed by his own greatness? That's what should terrify the rest of the NBA. Victor Wembanyama's greatest weapon isn't his height or his skill, it's his mind. The Spurs didn't just draft a future all-star, they drafted a complete paradigm shift. Game 1 wasn't just a win, it was a warning shot to the entire league. The records are already starting to fall, and he's just getting warmed up. If this is what Wembanyama does in his very first taste of the playoffs, what is his prime going to look like? The Trailblazers already look outmatched, and the rest of the West is officially on notice. So, what do you think? Is this the start of a deep playoff run for the Spurs? Can they ride this momentum to the Western Conference Finals? Comment your prediction below. Give this video a like if you think Wembanyama is already in the MVP conversation for next season, and make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. You're not going to want to miss what he does for an encore.